Where do I begin? I've been an avid reader of NoSleep for a while now. All of these stories just seem so bizarre. My heart goes out to everybody who has had to experience such displeasure. I've been debating on whether or not I should share my story, but I figured, what the hell? So, here it goes. When I was 14, my mother managed a senior citizen exclusive apartment complex in California. Hearing the sirens of fire trucks and ambulances was just an ordinary day to me. The firefighters called it Casa de Chaos, obviously a parody of the complex's actual name. I can't tell you how many people I was introduced to in those few years who kicked the bucket while I was still living there. But there was one man I'll never forget. His name was Richard. Since he is no longer with us, I don't feel too worried about using his real name. Richard had no family, no friends, and kept to himself. In fact, I was really the only person he ever went out of his way to talk to. Being the son of the manager, there was a certain level of courtesy and kindness I had to show all tenants there. And of course, Richard was no exception. He was a shorter, flimsy old man. I'm a tad over 6 feet tall, so I towered over Richard. I thought it was funny how far he had to tilt his head upwards just to make eye contact. He had a full head of long white hair that was about as well kept as Dr. Emmett Brown on Back to the Future. He always wore these really funny robes and necklaces too. I never thought to ask him where he was from because honestly, the less I knew about my mom's tenants, the better. I was a 14-year-old antisocial gamer. Can you blame me? So one day, I'm walking home from school and reach my complex. There was only 2 entrances. The front entrance, being closest to my apartment, requires me to walk across the public patio to get home. As I'm approaching the patio, I can't help but notice Richard, aimlessly walking around the patio in his not-so-normal attire. I try to be as minimally polite as possible, so I greet him with a hearty hello from about 15 or 20 feet away. As soon as I utter the word, Richard freezes in place with his back facing me. He didn't fumble. He didn't strain to keep himself balanced. He was completely and hauntingly frozen. I'm feeling a little awkward about now and really want to just ignore him. But Richard was very, very old, and if something was wrong with him and he needed medical attention, I did not want to be the guy that could have helped and didn't. It was the worst decision I ever made. Fearing the worst, I picked up my pace and made my way over to him, calling his name, asking him if he was all right. Richard! Hey Richard, are you okay? Hello? At this point, I'm about 6 feet away from him and closing. Hey, do you need me to call a... He says in a shrieking voice as he turns around, lunging his hands out that make contact with my chest. I shriek in terror, trip, fall, crack my head on the pavement, and pass out. I woke up in a hospital bed with bandages around my head and my mother sobbing.
Oh, thank God you're awake. Richard found you bleeding from the head at the patio, and he called the police.
What? At the time, I was so confused, and ultimately took what my mom said as the events that occurred. When you suffer a blow like I did, actual events get a little hazy, to say the least. I spent the night in the hospital and was released the following morning. My dad ended up picking me up to take me to my mother's, since I guess my mom had a matter to take care of at work. They're divorced in case there's any confusion. I finally get home and I'm completely exhausted. My head was throbbing, and all this moving around got me a little dizzy. At the time I was thinking about going to see Richard to thank him for, allegedly, saving my life, I suppose. So I reluctantly and lethargically step out of my apartment and mosey on down to where Richard lives. Well, I guess I should say where he used to live. The reason why my mom couldn't pick me up is because Richard was found dead in his apartment. He shot himself in the head. After that, shit started to get really fucked up for me.